A week before Christmas, I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard voices coming from the living room. It was Amanda, my daughter, talking on the phone. Her tone was casual, carefree, like she was planning a vacation or picking out a new dress. I moved closer slowly without making a sound because something in her voice made me stop. Then I heard her say it clearly. "Just leave all 8 grandkids with her to watch and that's it. She has nothing else to do anyway. We'll go to the hotel and enjoy ourselves in peace." I felt the floor open up under my feet. I stood there paralyzed behind the door, the mug still in my hand, trying to process what I had just heard. It wasn't the first time I had heard something like that, but never so direct, so cold, so completely lacking any consideration for me. Amanda kept talking, even laughing. "Yes, Mark already booked the hotel on the coast. We're going to enjoy these days without the kids." Robert and Lucy agree too. "They're going to that resort they wanted to see so badly. Mom has experience. She knows how to handle all 8 of them. Besides, she already bought the gifts and paid for the dinner. We just have to show up on the 25th, eat open presents, and that's it." Perfect. No. Perfect. That word hung in the air like poison. Perfect for them. Perfect for everyone except me. I set the mug down on the table, carefully trying not to make noise. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from a rage so deep I didn't even know I had it inside me. A rage that had been sleeping for years, waiting for the exact moment to wake up. I left the kitchen, silently crossed the hall, and went up the stairs to my room. Each step felt heavier than the last. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed, staring into space. There I was, Helen Anderson, 67 years old, a widow for 12 years, mother of 2 children who had just reduced me to a free employee. Grandmother of 8 grandchildren who I love with all my heart, but who apparently only serve as an excuse for their parents to escape their responsibilities. Amanda had 3 children. Robert had 5. 8 beautiful creatures that I adored, but whose own parents were willing to dump them with me as if I were a 24-hour babysitting service. I looked around my room. The walls were covered in family photos, birthdays, graduations, first communions. In all those photos I was there, always present, always smiling, always holding someone serving something, organizing everything from the background. But in none of those photos was I the center. In none of those celebrations had anyone thought of me first. I got up and walked to the closet. There were the bags of gifts I had bought over the last 3 months. 8 gifts carefully chosen for each of my grandkids. Toys, clothes, books. I had spent over $1,200 in total. Money that came from my pension, which wasn't much, but which I had always managed carefully to be able to give them something special for Christmas. There was also the receipt from the supermarket, where I had prepaid for the entire dinner for 18 people. Turkey side dishes, desserts, drinks. Another $900 that came out of my pocket without anyone asking. I just did it because I thought that's how you showed love. I thought that if I gave enough eventually, I would get something back. How naive I had been. I sat on the bed again and closed my eyes. The memories started coming in waves. Last Christmas, I had cooked for 2 whole days. Amanda and Mark arrived late, ate quickly and left early because they had a party with friends. Robert and Lucy did the same. The kids stayed with me until midnight. I bathed them, put them to sleep on the mattresses I had set up in the living room, and I stayed awake watching them while their parents were off toasting somewhere else. Christmas 2 years ago. The same. I prepared everything, they consumed it, and at the end of the day I was left alone picking up dirty plates and broken toys while I listened to the echo of silence in my house. And so it went year after year. Birthdays, graduation parties, celebrations of all kinds. I was always the one in the kitchen, the one cleaning, the one watching the kids, while everyone else had fun. But my birthday, my birthday. On that day, nobody remembered. Last year, Amanda called me 3 days later to say she had forgotten. Robert didn't even call. There was no cake. There was no dinner. There was nothing. Just a text message from Amanda that said, "Sorry, Mom, it slipped my mind. You know how it is with the kids." I opened my eyes and looked at the gift bags again. Something inside me broke in that moment. It wasn't a dramatic break. Not a scream or an uncontrolled cry. It was something much deeper. It was the silent fracture of a woman who finally understood she had been living for everyone but herself. I stood up and walked to the phone. I looked through my contacts until I found the name Paula Smith, my friend for 30 years. Paula had invited me the week before to spend Christmas with her in a small town near the beach. I had turned down the invitation because of course I had to be with my family. I dialed her number. It rang 3 times before she answered. "Helen, what a surprise. How are you?" "Paula," I said, and my voice came out firmer than I expected. "Is your invitation for Christmas still open?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Then Paula's warm voice answered, "Of course it is." What happened? Nothing. I lied. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe something was finally happening, something important. "I just decided that this year I want to do things differently." "That sounds perfect. We'll leave on the morning of the 23rd. I was planning to go to that little town on the coast where everything is quiet. No pressure, just rest and the ocean. That sounds exactly like what I need." We hung up, and I stared at the phone in my hand. Something had changed. I didn't know exactly what, but I felt it. It was as if after years of carrying an invisible weight, someone had finally given me permission to set it down. I went back down to the kitchen. Amanda was no longer in the living room. She had probably left without even saying goodbye like she always did. I picked up my notebook and started writing a list. It wasn't a shopping list or a to-do list for Christmas dinner. It was a list of things I was going to cancel. I sat in the kitchen with the notebook open in front of me. The pen in my hand felt heavier than usual. Outside, the December sun was starting to set behind the buildings, painting everything orange and gray. Inside me, something dark was also beginning to move. I wrote the first line. "Cancel supermarket order. $900 that would go back into my account. $900 that I had painstakingly saved, calculating every penny of my pension to give them a decent dinner. A dinner they wouldn't even appreciate." I wrote the second line. "Return gifts. $1,200 more. Money I had saved for months, depriving myself of things I needed so I could see my grandchildren's faces light up when they opened their presents. But their parents weren't even going to be there to see it. They were going to be in hotels, at resorts, having fun while I did the work." I closed the notebook and leaned back against the chair. The memories started to flood in without permission, as they always did when I was alone. I remembered Christmas 5 years ago. It was the first Christmas without my husband. He had died in October, and I was still broken inside, trying to pretend everything was fine. Amanda called me 2 weeks before Christmas and said, "Mom, you're going to cook like always this year, right? The kids are expecting your turkey. We don't want to disappoint them." I had just lost the love of my life, and my daughter was asking me to cook. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't offer to help. She just reminded me of my obligation. And I did it. I cooked the turkey. I prepared the side dishes. I decorated the house. I put on a nice dress and smiled when everyone arrived. No one mentioned my husband. No one made a toast to his memory. It was as if he had never existed. They ate opened presents and left. I was left alone that night, sitting on the sofa, looking at the leftover food, and wondering if anyone would notice if I just disappeared. I also remembered my 65th birthday. It was 2 years ago. I wasn't expecting much, I never did, but that particular day I had woken up with a small spark of hope. Maybe Amanda would remember. Maybe Robert would show up with the kids. Maybe someone would make me feel like my existence mattered. I waited all day. I made coffee in case someone came. I baked a small cake, feeling ridiculous for doing it for myself. The hours passed. The phone didn't ring. No one knocked on the door. At 8 at night, I finally got a message from Amanda. "Sorry, Mom, the day just flew by." "Happy belated birthday." Robert didn't even write. I ate a slice of cake alone in the darkness of my kitchen, wondering at what point I had become invisible to my own children. But the worst part wasn't the forgotten birthdays or the lonely Christmases. The worst part was all the times I became useful to them. I remembered when Amanda had her first child. I was excited to be a grandmother. I thought it would be a beautiful experience we would share together. But from day one, Amanda turned me into her personal nanny. "Mom, come watch the baby. I need to sleep. Mom, keep him tonight. We have an important dinner. Mom, take him to the doctor. I have work." It was never, Mom, thank you. It was never, Mom, how are you? It was always, Mom, I need you to do this, and I did it. Of course I did, because I thought that's how it worked. I thought that if I made myself indispensable, if I solved all their problems, eventually they would see me. They would value me. They would love me the way I needed to be loved. But it didn't work like that. The more I gave, the more they asked. The more I did, the more they expected. I became a resource, not a person. A solution, not a mother. Robert was no different. When he and Lucy had their first child, the story repeated itself. Midnight calls because the baby wouldn't stop crying and they didn't know what to do. Entire weekends watching the kids because they needed time for themselves. They never paid me. They never truly thanked me. They just assumed I would always be there available with no life of my own, no needs of my own. And the saddest part is that I let it happen. I trained my children to treat me this way. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I smiled when I was breaking inside. Every time I swallowed my pain so I wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. I built this prison. I forged the chains myself. I got up from the chair and walked to the window. Outside, the neighbors' Christmas lights were starting to turn on, bright colors trying to cheer up the winter darkness. But inside me, there was only gray. I thought about all the Christmases before, all the times I had decorated this house alone, all the trees I had put up without help, all the dinners I had prepared while my children arrived late or didn't arrive at all. I thought about last year when Amanda asked me to watch her 3 kids for 4 days because she and Mark were going on an anniversary trip. I agreed, of course. The kids got sick during those days, high fevers, vomiting. I didn't sleep for 3 nights, taking care of them, taking them to the doctor, giving them medicine. When Amanda came back tanned and rested, the first thing she said to me was, "Mom, the kids look terrible. What did you feed them?" She didn't ask how I was. She didn't thank me for staying up all night. She blamed me. And I said nothing. I just lowered my head and apologized. I also remembered when Robert asked to borrow money 2 years ago. He needed to pay off a debt and assured me he would pay me back in 3 months. It was $2,000, almost everything I had saved for emergencies. I gave him the money. 3 months passed, 6 months passed, a year passed. He never paid me back. And when I finally gathered the courage to ask him about it, he looked at me as if I were the selfish one. "Mom, I'm in a tough spot right now. I can't give you that money. I thought you gave it to me as a gift. You're my mother. You're supposed to help me without expecting anything in return." I was speechless, because he was right about one thing. I had always given without expecting anything in return. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. That didn't mean it didn't make me feel used. I went back to the table and opened the notebook again. I started writing a different list. It wasn't a list of things to cancel. It was a list of all the times I had been invisible. My 63rd birthday. No one came. Mother's Day last year. I got a generic text message. Christmas 3 years ago. I cooked for 15 people. No one stayed to help me clean. The time I was in the hospital for an infection, Amanda said she couldn't visit because she had yoga. When I sold my mother's jewelry to help Robert with his business, he never thanked me. The list grew, page after page, years and years of moments when I had been treated as secondary, as someone whose existence only mattered when it was convenient for others. When I finished writing, I looked at the pages full of black ink and realized something. I had ceased to exist for them a long time ago. I had become a function. A service. I was no longer Helen. I was no longer the woman who had dreams, desires, needs. I was just Mom, the problem solver, Grandma, the caregiver, her the one who is always available. I closed the notebook forcefully. The sound echoed in the empty kitchen. Something inside me hardened in that moment. It wasn't hate. It wasn't revenge. It was something much simpler and more powerful. It was the decision to never disappear again. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of the house. A silence I knew all too well, the same silence that had been my companion for the last 12 years, ever since my husband died and left me alone in this world. But I wasn't really alone, was I? I had 2 children. I had 8 grandchildren. I had a family. Or at least that's what I believed. What I had believed for so long. I got out of bed around 3 in the morning and went down to the living room. I turned on a small lamp and sat on the sofa. In front of me on the wall was the large family portrait we had taken 4 years ago. We were all there. Amanda with Mark and their 3 kids, Robert with Lucy and their 5 kids, and me in the center smiling. But as I looked at that photo, something hit me with brutal force. I wasn't really in the center. I was in the back, almost hidden behind everyone, as if the photographer had decided my presence wasn't important enough to highlight. I got closer to the photo and looked at it more carefully. Amanda was at the front, perfectly made up with a radiant smile. Robert was next to her with that confident look he always had. The children, beautiful, full of life. Mark and Lucy posing as if they were in a magazine. And me. I was back there, small, blurry, almost invisible. I remembered the day we took that photo. It had been Amanda's idea. "Mom, we need a professional family photo, something we can frame and put in the living room." I had been excited. I thought there would finally be a memory where we would all be together united. But when we got to the studio, the photographer started arranging everyone. He put Amanda and Robert in the front. He arranged the grandchildren around them. He placed Mark and Lucy in strategic positions, and then he looked at me and said, "You stand in the back, ma'am. That way you don't block anyone." I obeyed. Like I always did. I stood in the back. I didn't block anyone. I let everyone else shine while I stayed in the shadows. Amanda reviewed the photos and was thrilled. "It looks beautiful, Mom. You look perfect back there, perfect back there." Those words now burned me like acid. I moved away from the portrait and walked to the other side of the living room where there was a small shelf with more photos. Photos of birthdays, graduations, parties. I started to look at them one by one. In the photo of Amanda's graduation, I wasn't there. She had told me there were only tickets for her husband and kids. "You understand, Mom. Space is limited." I understood. I always understood. In the photo of Robert's first child's baptism, I was cut in half. Someone had decided the important part of the photo was the baby and the parents. My face was split by the edge of the frame. In the Christmas photo from 3 years ago, I was in the kitchen serving food. I wasn't at the table with them. I wasn't making a toast. I was working. Like always, I kept looking, photo after photo. And in all of them, it was the same. I was absent, cut off, blurry, or simply in the background doing something useful. I was never the center. I was never the protagonist. I was always the accessory. I sat on the sofa again with an old album in my hands. It was an album from when my children were little. Photos of when Amanda was 5 and Robert was 7. Photos of birthdays, of beach vacations, of afternoons in the park. In all those photos I was present, smiling, hugging them, kissing them, being their mom. At what point did I stop being their mom and become their servant? I remembered a specific moment. Amanda was 16. She had come home from school furious because a friend had betrayed her. I was cooking, but I dropped everything to listen to her. I sat with her for 2 hours, drying her tears, giving her advice, making her laugh. At the end, she hugged me and said, "Thanks, Mom. You're the best. You're always there when I need you. You're always there when I need you." That phrase had been a blessing then. Now I saw it as a curse because I realized that's exactly what I was to them. Someone who was there when they needed me. Not someone who existed on her own. Not someone with her own needs. Just someone available to solve their problems. And with Robert, it had been the same. I remembered when he was 20 and going through a tough breakup. He came to my house in the middle of the night crying. I stayed up with him all night. I made him tea. I hugged him. I told him everything was going to be okay. He told me, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom. You always know how to fix things. You always know how to fix things." Another curse disguised as a compliment. Because that's what I did. I fixed things. I solved problems. I was available. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being a person and became a tool. I closed the album and set it aside. My hands were shaking not from cold, but from contained rage. I remembered Mother's Day last year, that day that's supposed to be for honoring mothers, to make them feel special, to thank them for everything they've done. Amanda sent me a text message at 11 in the morning. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom. We love you so much," with a heart emoji at the end. That was it. A generic message she probably sent from her bed without even thinking about it. Robert called me at 3 in the afternoon. "Hi, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. Hey, can you watch the kids next weekend? Lucy and I need to go out." Not even on Mother's Day could I just be the mother. I still had to be the nanny. I told them yes, like always. And I spent that day alone cooking for myself, pretending I didn't care. But I did care. God, how I cared. I got up from the sofa and walked to the window. Outside, the street was empty. The neighbors' Christmas lights were still on, twinkling in the darkness. Green, red, gold, colors that promised joy, colors that lied. I thought about all the times I had put up those same lights in my house, all the times I had decorated the tree alone, all the times I had tried to create a warm, welcoming atmosphere for my family. And what had I gotten in return? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I remembered the year I got sick. It was 3 years ago. A bad pneumonia that left me in bed for 2 weeks. The doctor told me I needed complete rest and that someone should take care of me. I called Amanda. "Mom, I can't. The kids have activities and Mark is busy with work. But I can send you some soup. How does that sound?" She never sent the soup. I called Robert. "Mom, this week is complicated. Lucy has an important event and I have meetings. But I'll call you later." "Okay." He didn't call. I spent those 2 weeks alone, dragging myself to the kitchen to make myself something to eat, taking medicine with shaking hands, sleeping in a sweat and fever with no one to put a cold cloth on my forehead. And when I finally recovered and was available for them again, no one asked how I had been. They just went back to calling when they needed something. "Mom, can you watch the kids? Mom, can you lend me money? Mom, I need you to come help me with this." Always needing, never giving. I moved away from the window and went back to the sofa. I picked up my phone and opened the photo gallery. I started looking at recent photos that Amanda and Robert posted on their social media. There they were, smiling, happy, in elegant restaurants, on trips to the beach, at parties with friends, living their perfect lives. And in none of those photos did I appear, because I wasn't part of their perfect lives. I was part of their obligations, their burdens, the things they had to tolerate but not celebrate. I kept scrolling. I found a photo from 6 months ago. It was Mark's birthday. Amanda had organized a big party. There was food, music, decorations. Everyone looked happy. I wasn't invited. I found out about the party days later when I saw the photos online. When I asked Amanda why she hadn't invited me, she said, "Oh, Mom, it was an adult party. I thought you'd be bored. Besides, it was last minute." Last minute. It had been planned for weeks. But I wasn't invited, because I wasn't part of their social circle. I was just the one who watched their kids when they wanted to go out. The tears started to fall. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of years and years of feeling small, invisible, insignificant. I wiped the tears away angrily and took a deep breath. I wasn't going to cry over this anymore. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for my children to finally see me. Because now I understood the truth. They were never going to see me. Not because I wasn't visible, but because they had chosen not to look. The sunrise came slowly that morning. I was still awake on the sofa, surrounded by scattered albums and photos. The gray daylight started to filter through the windows, illuminating the mess of memories I had left around me. I stood up, my body aching. I hadn't slept at all, but my mind was clearer than ever. It was as if the fog of years of confusion had finally lifted, and I could see with a painful sharpness. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. While I waited for the coffee maker to finish, I opened my phone and looked for the supermarket's number. It was 7 in the morning. I knew they opened at 8. I decided to wait. I sat at the table with my steaming mug of coffee in my hands. The warmth of the liquid comforted me, anchored me to the reality of what I was about to do. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was something deeper. It was the conscious decision to stop sacrificing myself for people who had never valued it. It was choosing myself for the first time in decades. At 8 o'clock sharp, I dialed the supermarket's number. A friendly voice answered on the other end. "Good morning, Central Market. How can I help you?" Good morning. I need to cancel an order I placed for Christmas. The name is Helen Anderson. There was a pause while the person looked in the system. Yes, here it is. A large order for 18 people, turkey full-side dishes, desserts. The total is $900. Are you sure you want to cancel it? It's almost ready to be delivered on the 23rd. Completely sure. Please cancel it. Understood. The full refund will be issued to your card within 3 to 5 business days. Is there anything else I can help you with? No, that's all. Thank you. I hung up the phone and stared at it. $900 that would come back to me. $900 I could use for myself, for something I wanted, for something that made me happy. Next on my list were the gifts. I had bought 8 gifts at different stores over the last 3 months. Some still had receipts, others didn't, but I was going to try to return them all. I got dressed quickly and left the house. The first store opened at 9. I arrived 15 minutes early and waited in the parking lot. When the doors finally opened, I went straight to the returns counter. Good morning. I need to return this. I put a large box on the counter with a construction set I had bought for Robert's oldest son. It had cost $150. The employee checked the receipt. It's within the return period. Any problem with the product, no. I just changed my mind. Understood. Refund to the card or store credit? Refund to the card. She processed the return and handed me the receipt. $150 back. I went to the second store. I returned a bicycle I had bought for one of Amanda's daughters. $200 more. Third store, a large doll with accessories. $100. Fourth store, clothes for 3 of the grandkids. $220. Store after store. Return after return. Some employees looked at me curiously. An old woman returning so many toys days before Christmas. They probably thought it was strange, but I didn't care what they thought. By 2 in the afternoon, I had gotten back $100. There were 2 gifts I couldn't return because I had lost the receipts. I left them in a donation box outside a church. Let other children enjoy them, children whose parents might actually value their grandmothers. I returned home exhausted, but with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't joy, it wasn't sadness. It was something like relief, like when you finally stop carrying something heavy that you've been holding for too long. I sat in the living room and dialed Paula's number. Helen, what a surprise. How are you, Paula, about that trip to the beach? How long were you planning to stay? Well, I was going to stay until the 27th, but I can stay longer if you want. In fact, I was thinking of spending New Year's there too. It's a quiet place, perfect for resting. Can I go with you? I mean, not just for Christmas. I want to go for longer. A week, maybe 2? There was a pause. Then Paula said softly, Helen, are you okay? Can you tell me? And then it all came out. I told her about the conversation I had overheard, about Amanda and Robert planning to leave me with all 8 kids while they went on vacation, about all the years of being invisible, about the forgotten birthdays and lonely Christmases, about feeling used and discarded. Paula listened in silence. When I finished, her voice was firm and warm. Helen, listen to me carefully. You are coming with me. We leave on the morning of the 23rd, and we don't come back until you want to. We're going to spend Christmas and New Year's at the beach, eating well, resting with no pressure from anyone. And if anyone calls you, you don't answer. Do you hear me? You don't answer. But the kids have parents, and those parents can take care of them for once in their lives. You are not responsible for solving the problems they created for themselves. She was right. Of course she was right. But decades of conditioning don't disappear with one conversation. I'm scared, Paula. Scared of what they'll say, of what they'll think. And what about what you think, about what you feel? Helen, you've spent your whole life worrying about what others feel. It's time someone worried about you. And if no one else is going to do it, then you do it yourself. We hung up after agreeing on the details of the trip. Paula would pick me up on the 23rd at 8 in the morning. We would only bring what was necessary. Comfortable clothes, swimsuits, books. No stress, no obligations. The next few days were strange. Amanda called twice to confirm that everything was ready for Christmas. I answered evasively. Yes, Amanda, Everything is under control. I wasn't exactly lying. Everything was under control. My control, not hers. Robert sent a message. Mom, we're dropping the kids off with you on the 24th at 10 a.m. We'll be back on the 26th at night. Thanks for doing this. I didn't reply. I just left the message on read. On the night of December 22nd, I started to pack. I took a small suitcase out of the closet and put it on the bed. I didn't need much. A pair of comfortable pants, light blouses, sandals, my swimsuit that I hadn't worn in years. While I was packing, the doorbell rang. It was late, almost 9 at night. I went downstairs puzzled and opened the door. It was Amanda. She had a bag in her hand and a forced smile on her face. "Hi, Mom. I brought you this." She held out the bag. Inside were packages of cookies and juice boxes. For the kids. You know how they like their snacks. She didn't invite herself in. She didn't even ask how I was. She just handed me the bag like someone delivering a package. "Amanda," I said in a calm voice, "I need to tell you something." She glanced at her watch. "Mom, I'm in a hurry. Mark is waiting for me in the car. It can be quick." I looked at my daughter. I really looked at her. I saw the woman she had become, successful, confident, well-dressed, but I also saw her for what she was, someone who had learned to use people without even realizing she was doing it. "I'm not going to be here for Christmas." Amanda blinked, confused. "What do you mean you're not going to be here, Mom? We already agreed." "What? You agreed? I didn't agree to anything. I heard your conversation last week. I know you plan to dump all 8 kids on me while you and Robert go on vacation." Her face stiffened. "You were listening to my private conversations. I was in my own house. You were the one talking loudly without caring if I heard or not. Mom, it's not a big deal. It's just a few days. The kids adore you." "It's not a big deal," I repeated slowly. "It's not a big deal to use me as a free babysitter. It's not a big deal to assume I have no life of my own. It's not a big deal that you never ask me what I want. What are you talking about? We've always included you, included me. Amanda, I wasn't invited to Mark's birthday. I wasn't invited to your anniversary last year. The only time you include me is when you need something from me. You're exaggerating. No, I'm seeing things clearly for the first time in years." Amanda sighed with impatience. "Fine. So what do you want? You want us to pay you? Is that it?" Her words hit me like a slap. "Pay me." As if that was what was missing. As if the problem was money and not the absolute lack of respect and love. "I don't want your money, Amanda. I want you to see me. I want you to value me. But I realize that's never going to happen. So I've decided to do something different this year. I'm going on a trip. I'm leaving tomorrow morning and I'm not coming back until after New Year's." The silence that followed my words was so thick I could feel it. Amanda stared at me as if I had just spoken in an unknown language. Her mouth opened and closed several times before she finally found her voice. "What do you mean you're going on a trip, Mom? You can't be serious." "I am completely serious. But everything is already planned. The kids are expecting to come here. We already told them they'd spend Christmas with Grandma. Then you'll have to change your plans, just like I changed mine." Amanda took a step back as if my words were physically threatening. "You can't do this to us. It's Christmas. It's family time." "It's family time," I repeated with a calm that surprised me. "But I don't count as family, do I? I only count as the one who solves everyone's problems." "You're being ridiculous. Of course you're family. When was the last time you invited me to do something that didn't involve watching your kids?" She opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. I watched her search her memory, trying to find a single example. She couldn't find one. "Exactly," I said. "You can't remember because it hasn't happened. I only exist to you when you need me. Mom, you're misinterpreting everything. We've been busy, it's true, but that doesn't mean we don't love you. Love without actions is just empty words." "Amanda." Her face started to turn red. I recognized that expression. It was the same one she made when she was a child and didn't get her way. "So what are we supposed to do with the kids? Robert and I already paid for the hotels. We already made the reservations. We can't just cancel everything. That's not my problem." "Not your problem. They're your grandchildren." "Yes, they're my grandchildren. But they're your children. Your responsibility, not mine." Amanda shook her head in disbelief. "I don't recognize you. This isn't you. You're right. This isn't the woman you've known all your life. That woman let you walk all over her. This new version has decided that enough is enough, and you're going to do this. You're going to ruin your grandchildren's Christmas just to make a point." Her words were designed to make me feel guilty, and they worked. For a moment. I felt the familiar pang in my chest, the urge to back down to say I was exaggerating to go back to my usual role. But then I remembered the conversation I'd heard. Just leave all 8 grandkids with her to watch, and that's it. I remembered all the forgotten birthdays, all the lonely nights, all the moments I had been invisible to my own family. "I'm not ruining anything," I said, my voice firm. "You ruined the respect you should have had for me years ago. I'm just picking up what's left of my dignity. This is pure selfishness. Dad would be disappointed in you. That was the last straw, mentioning my dead husband, using him as a weapon against me." "Don't you dare," I said, and my voice came out harsher than I intended. "Don't you dare talk about your father. He never treated me the way you do. He valued me, he saw me, he truly loved me, and we love you too." "No, you use me. There's a difference." Amanda pulled her phone out of her pocket. "I'm calling Robert. He'll talk to you. This is insane. Call him if you want. My decision isn't going to change." She dialed while glaring at me. She waited for Robert to answer. "Robert, you're on speaker. I'm with Mom, and she just told me she's not going to be here for Christmas, that she's going on a trip. Tell her this is absurd." I heard Robert's voice on the other end. "What Mom is, that true?" "Yes, Robert, it's true. But why did something happen?" "A lot of things happened, over many years, and I finally decided I deserve better than to be treated like your employee. Nobody treats you like an employee. You're our mother." "When was my last birthday?" Robert silenced. "I'll tell you. It was August 15th, 4 months ago. You didn't call. You didn't write. You didn't visit. Nothing. Mom, I was busy with... You're always busy. Everyone is always busy. Except when you need me for something. Then you find the time." "This isn't fair," Amanda chimed in. "You're punishing us for something we didn't even know was bothering you. It bothered me because you never stopped to ask. You never cared how I felt. You only cared about what I could do for you." Robert spoke again. "Mom, we can talk about this after Christmas, but right now we need you to be available." I finished for him. "That's the word you're looking for. You need me to be available." "Well, guess what? I'm not available anymore. So what are we going to do?" Robert's voice sounded more irritated than concerned. "You're going to do what all parents do. Take care of your own children, cancel your trips, or take the kids with you, or hire someone. I don't know. It's not my problem to solve." Amanda closed her eyes as if trying hard to stay calm. "Mom, be reasonable. We've already paid thousands of dollars for these trips. We can't just... I paid $900 for the dinner you were going to eat, $200 for the gifts you were going to open. That money matters too. Or at least it should." "Wait," Robert said. "You canceled the dinner and the gifts. I returned them, every single one, and I got my money back." The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. I could picture Robert's face processing this information. "I can't believe you did that," Amanda finally said. "The kids are going to be heartbroken. The kids will be fine. They're resilient. What they won't be fine with is if they keep growing up thinking grandmothers only exist to serve them." Amanda put her phone away. Her eyes were shining, but I don't know if it was from tears or rage. "Fine, go. Take your trip. But don't expect things to go back to the way they were when you get back. I don't want things to go back to the way they were. That's exactly the point." She turned around and started walking toward her car. Then she stopped and looked at me over her shoulder. "You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner." I watched her get into the car where Mark was waiting. Even from a distance, I could see her tense body language as she told him what had happened. The car sped off and disappeared into the darkness. I closed the door and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I didn't feel bad. I felt liberated. I went up to my room and continued packing. I folded each piece of clothing carefully, thinking about the beach, the sun conversations without pressure. I packed my swimsuit, the one I had bought 3 years ago and never worn, because there was never time for me. I put my favorite book in the suitcase, a book I had tried to read 5 times but was always interrupted. This time I would finish it. I added a new notebook. Maybe I would write. Maybe I would draw. Maybe I'd just use it to make lists of things that made me happy, things I'd forgotten I liked. My phone started ringing. It was Robert. I didn't answer. He called 3 more times. Then Amanda. Then Mark. Then Lucy. They all wanted to convince me. They all wanted me to go back to my place, the place where I was useful but invisible. I turned off the phone. The silence that followed was beautiful. I sat on the bed and looked at the half-filled suitcase. It was small. I didn't need much. I just needed room to breathe. December 23rd dawned with a clear sky. I woke up early before the sun came up with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was anticipation. Something I hadn't felt in years. I took a long shower, letting the hot water relax my tense muscles. I got dressed in comfortable clothes, some cotton pants and a light blouse. Nothing fancy. Nothing that needed ironing or coordinating. Just clothes that made me feel free. I went down to the kitchen and made coffee. As I drank it, I looked around the house. Everything was clean, tidy, empty. There were no Christmas decorations this year. No tree, no lights. It was just a house. And for the first time in a long time, that seemed like enough. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Paula had arrived. I opened the door, and there she was, smiling with sunglasses on her head and an infectious energy. Ready for adventure. More than ready. I put my suitcase in the trunk of her car. It was an old but reliable car, perfect for a long trip. Paula had packed a cooler with water sodas and snacks for the road. When I got in the car and closed the door, I felt something I didn't expect. Absolute relief. As if I had just dropped a weight I had been carrying for decades. "Everything good?" Paula asked as she started the car. "Everything's perfect." We left the city behind. The streets became less congested, the buildings smaller, until finally there was only the open road in front of us. Paula put on soft music, nothing Christmas-related, just calm melodies that filled the silence without demanding attention. We didn't talk much for the first hour. I looked out the window, watching the landscape go by. Open fields, trees, small towns that appeared and disappeared. I felt like I was waking up from a long, confusing dream. "Did they call?" Paula eventually asked. "Many times." I turned off the phone. "Good job." "Paula, do you think I'm a bad person?" She glanced at me. "Why would you ask that?" "Because I left my grandkids without Christmas." "Because I canceled everything." "Because I left." Paula sighed. "Helen, tell me something. If a friend of yours told you this story, if she told you her kids use her, that they never value her, that they only look for her when they need something, what would you tell her?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'd tell her she deserves better." "Exactly. So why don't you deserve the same?" I didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe I did, but I had never allowed myself to say it out loud. I had spent so many years believing my value was in what I could give, in what I could do for others, that I had forgotten I also had the right to receive. We kept driving. We stopped once for gas and to stretch our legs. Paula bought coffee and sweetbread. We sat on a bench outside the gas station, eating in comfortable silence. "The town we're going to is small," Paula said. "There's not much to do, but that's the point. It's quiet. The people are friendly. There's a beautiful beach. And the house I rented has a terrace where you can watch the sunset. Sounds perfect. There's no internet at the house. Well, there is, but it's terrible. So you'll basically be disconnected. Even better." We arrived in town around 2 in the afternoon. It was exactly as Paula had described it. Small, picturesque, with pastel-colored houses and cobblestone streets. The sea breeze reached us, carrying the smell of salt and freedom. The house Paula had rented was modest but cozy. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a living room with large windows facing the beach. Everything was simple, clean, calm. "This is your room," Paula said, opening a door. It was a small room with a bed covered in white sheets, a nightstand, and a window with an ocean view. I left my suitcase on the floor and went to the window. The ocean stretched out infinitely in front of me, shining under the afternoon sun. The waves broke gently on the shore. A few seagulls flew in circles. I stood there just looking, and something inside me began to loosen, something that had been tight for years. "I'm going to make something to eat," Paula said from the doorway. "Rest for a bit if you want." I sat on the bed and took a deep breath. The air here tasted different. Cleaner, freer. I turned on my phone for just a moment to see if there were any real emergencies. 53 missed calls, 27 text messages, all from Amanda, Robert, Mark, Lucy. The messages started with confusion, then moved to anger, then to attempts at manipulation. "Amanda, the kids are crying. This is what you want." "Robert, I called the supermarket. They confirmed you canceled everything. This is a level of selfishness I never imagined from you." "Mark, Helen Amanda is very upset. This isn't good for her health. You need to come back." "Lucy, I don't understand what we did wrong. We've always treated you with respect. I read each message without feeling what I expected to feel. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel the urge to respond. I just felt a clear distance between them and me." I turned the phone off again and put it in the bottom of my suitcase. Paula called me from the kitchen. "Food's ready." I left the room and found a simple table, but full of good things. Fresh salad, grilled fish, rice, fruit. Simple food that had been prepared with care. We ate slowly, without rushing, talking about unimportant things. The weather, the colors of the sunset, the plans for the next few days. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve," Paula said. "I thought we could walk on the beach in the morning. There's a small market downtown where they sell crafts. And at night, if you want, we can make a simple dinner here or go to the town restaurant. Whatever you prefer is fine with me. Helen, this trip is for you. What do you want?" The question took me by surprise. What did I want? It had been so long since anyone had asked me that. "I want to walk on the beach," I said slowly. "I want to see the market. And at night, I want a quiet dinner here, stress-free." Paula smiled. "Then that's what we'll do." That afternoon, we walked on the beach. The sun was beginning to set and everything was turning golden. I let the water touch my feet. It was cold, but refreshing. Paula walked beside me, picking up shells now and then. There were other people on the beach, families with children building sandcastles, couples walking hand in hand, groups of friends laughing. Everyone seemed at peace. No one seemed to be carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. "Do you know what hurts the most?" I said suddenly. "What? That they didn't even notice I was disappearing. They didn't even notice I was only there when they needed me. I was invisible for years and they never cared." Paula stopped and took my arm. "Helen, look at me. You are not invisible. They chose not to see you. There's a huge difference. And just because they couldn't see your value doesn't mean you don't have it." Her words hit me hard. I felt the tears coming, but this time I didn't stop them. I let them fall freely while the sound of the waves accompanied them. Paula hugged me. She didn't say anything else. She just held me while I cried out years of accumulated pain. When I finally pulled away, I wiped my tears and looked at the horizon. The sun was touching the water now, creating a path of light on the waves. "Thank you," I said to Paula. "For what?" "For seeing me, for being here, for not judging me. That's what real friends do." We returned to the house as it was getting dark. Paula made tea, and we sat on the terrace wrapped in light blankets, listening to the constant sound of the sea. We didn't talk much. There was no need. The company was enough. That night I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no anxiety, just a deep, restorative rest. December 24th dawned bright and warm. I woke up to the sound of seagulls and the smell of fresh coffee coming from the kitchen. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came back to me. I was far away. I was free. I was choosing myself for the first time in decades. I got up slowly, no rush. Paula was already in the kitchen making breakfast. Toast, fresh fruit, orange juice. "Good morning. How did you sleep better than I have in years?" We had breakfast on the terrace watching the sea. The water was calm this morning, almost like a mirror reflecting the sky. Some people were already walking on the beach, taking advantage of the cool hours before the sun got stronger. "Ready for the market?" Paula asked. "Ready." We walked to the center of town. The streets were livelier than the day before. Christmas music played from the shops, but it wasn't the loud commercial music of the city. It was soft, almost comforting. The market was small, but charming. There were stalls with local crafts, handmade jewelry paintings by local artists. Everything had a personal touch, as if each piece carried the story of its creator. I stopped at a stall selling woven bracelets. They were simple but beautiful, each in different colors. The woman selling them was older, probably my age. She had wrinkled but strong hands, hands that had worked a lifetime. "They're beautiful," I told her. "Thank you. I make them myself. Each one is unique. How much is this one?" I pointed to one in shades of green and white. $15. I took the money from my purse and bought it. I put it on my wrist, and I liked how it felt. Light, simple, mine. Paula bought some earrings. We kept walking, stopping at different stalls, no pressure, no schedule. It was the first time in years I could do something like this. Just walk, just look, just exist without anyone needing anything from me. At one of the stalls there were handmade notebooks. I remembered the notebook I had brought in my suitcase. I thought about all the things I wanted to write, all the things I had kept silent for so long. I bought a small notebook with a fabric cover. It cost $12. I'd have it as a backup for when the other one filled up with words that needed to come out. Around noon, we returned to the house. It was hot now, and we decided to spend the afternoon at the beach. Paula brought umbrellas and towels. I put on my swimsuit for the first time in 3 years. I looked at myself in the mirror before leaving. My body had aged. There were wrinkles, stretch marks, the marks of time, but it was also the body that had carried 2 children, the body that had worked tirelessly, the body that had sustained me through everything. At another time, I would have criticized myself. I would have thought about everything that was wrong. But today, I just felt gratitude. This body had brought me here, to this moment of freedom. We spent the afternoon under the umbrella. Paula read a book. I just watched the sea, feeling the sun on my skin, listening to the waves. There was peace here, a peace I didn't know could exist. At some point in the afternoon, I turned on my phone briefly. More messages, more calls. Now there were also messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably friends of Amanda and Robert recruited to make me feel guilty. One message in particular caught my eye. It was from Amanda. We had to cancel everything. The hotels wouldn't give us our money back. Robert is furious. The kids won't stop asking about you. I hope you're happy. I read the message twice. I expected to feel something. Guilt maybe. Remorse. But all I felt was a cold clarity. This was not my responsibility. It never should have been. I replied for the first time. "I'm sorry you had to change your plans. The children have parents. It's time for you to act like it." I sent the message and turned off the phone again. Paula looked at me. "Everything okay?" "Everything is perfect." That night, instead of an elaborate dinner, we made something simple. Pasta with fresh vegetables, salad, a glass of wine. We ate on the terrace as the sun dipped below the horizon. "Merry Christmas Eve," Paula said, raising her glass. "Merry Christmas Eve," I replied. We toasted, and the sound of the glasses clinking was soft and clear. There were no fireworks, no expensive gifts, no stress, just 2 friends sharing a quiet dinner by the sea. "You know what's strangest?" I said after a while. "What?" "That I don't miss anything I left behind. I thought I'd feel bad. I thought I'd miss the kids, the traditions, all that Christmas madness. But I don't. I just feel relief. That's because you're finally where you're supposed to be, with yourself." I slept deeply again that night. I dreamed of the sea, of walking on the beach, with no destination, of having time for everything and being in a hurry for nothing. Christmas Day dawned just as beautiful. Paula and I had a late breakfast, no alarms, no obligations. Then we went for a walk on a trail that bordered the coast. The scenery was breathtaking. Rocks, wild vegetation, the sea stretching out infinitely. In the afternoon, we decided to go to the town restaurant. It was a small, family-run place. There were other people there also spending Christmas quietly. An elderly couple, a group of friends. Everyone seemed happy, relaxed. We ordered fresh fish and a bottle of white wine. The food was delicious, prepared with care and love. It wasn't an elaborate 15-course dinner. It was simple, but it had something the dinners I used to prepare never had. I could enjoy it without worrying about serving others. As we were eating, my phone started vibrating in my purse. I ignored it. It kept vibrating. Paula looked at me. "Are you going to answer no?" But the vibration continued, insistent, annoying. Finally, I took the phone out. It was Amanda calling over and over. I sighed and answered. "Yes. Mom." Her voice sounded different, controlled but tense. "We need to talk. I'm busy." "You're busy," she repeated in a tone I couldn't quite decipher. "It's Christmas Day, and you're busy." "That's right. Robert and I are coming to your house tomorrow. We need to resolve this." "There's nothing to resolve, Amanda. I've already made my decision." "You can't just leave and pretend you don't have responsibilities." "My only responsibilities are to myself. You are adults. You have to learn to manage your own lives." "And the kids, it's not their fault." "The kids aren't at fault for anything, but it's not my job to raise them either. I already raised my children. Now it's your turn." "I don't recognize you." "Well, that's because the woman you knew no longer exists. She got tired of being invisible." There was a long pause. Then Amanda spoke in a lower, almost threatening voice. "Fine. If this is what you want, perfect. But don't expect us to look for you when you get back. Don't expect us to include you in anything. You made your decision. Now live with the consequences." "I'll live with them perfectly fine." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear. From something like liberation. Paula was watching me from across the table. "How do you feel?" "Free." That night back at the house, I sat on the terrace with the notebook I had bought. I opened the first page and started to write. Today is Christmas, and I am where I want to be. For the first time in my life, I chose my own peace over the expectations of others. And I don't regret it. I kept writing. About the years of silence, about the moments of invisibility, about learning that saying no isn't selfishness, it's self-love. I wrote until my hand ached. And when I finally closed the notebook, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The following days passed in a calm I had never known. Paula and I got up late, had breakfast on the terrace, walked on the beach, read, talked. There were no schedules, no pressures, just time moving slowly and softly like the waves. On the afternoon of December 28th, I was reading in the living room when I heard my phone ring. I had left it on, but on silent. This time it wasn't a call. It was a message from an unknown number. I opened it curiously. "Helen, this is Lauren Morris, your neighbor. Amanda and Robert are here. They've been knocking on your door for the last hour. I thought you should know." I read the message twice. So they had followed through on their threat. They had come looking for me. I pictured the scene. Amanda furious, banging on the door. Robert pacing back and forth impatiently. Both of them expecting me to appear to apologize to go back to my place. I replied to Lauren, "Thank you for letting me know. I'm out of town. I won't be back until after New Year's. If they come back, please don't give them any information about me." Lauren replied quickly, "Understood. Take care." I put the phone aside and went back to my book, but I couldn't concentrate. I knew this wasn't over. I knew that eventually I would have to face them. That night, as we ate dinner, I told Paula what had happened. "And what are you going to do when you get back?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I know I'm not going back to being who I was before." "What if they don't accept that?" "Then they don't. I can't control how they react. I can only control how I react." Paula nodded. "You're going to be fine, Helen. You're stronger than you think." On December 29th, we decided to do something different. Paula had heard about a small art gallery in the next town over. We took the car and went to explore. The gallery was small but full of beautiful works. Paintings of local landscapes, wooden sculptures, black and white photographs. All created by artists from the region. There was one painting in particular that caught my eye. It was an older woman, sitting in a wooden chair looking out at the sea. Her posture was calm, almost meditative. There was something in that image that resonated deeply with me. "It's beautiful," I told the gallery owner. "A local artist painted it. he explained. She says it represents the peace that comes after the storm. How much is it? $250. It was more than I had planned to spend. But something about that painting spoke to me. It was like seeing my own transformation reflected in oil. I'll take it. Back at the house, we hung the painting in the living room. Paula stepped back to admire it. It's perfect for you. Yes, I said. I think it is. That night I wrote more in my notebook, about the fear I had felt at first, about the guilt I expected to feel but which never came, about discovering that chosen solitude was different from imposed loneliness. On December 30th, as we were walking on the beach, my phone rang. This time it was a number I recognized. It was Mark Amanda's husband. I hesitated before answering. Then I decided it was time to face this directly. Yes. Helen, I need to talk to you. His voice was serious, almost formal. I'm listening. Amanda is devastated. You don't understand the damage you've caused. On the contrary, I understand perfectly the damage I've allowed to be caused to me for years. This isn't about you. This is about family. Family. Mark, how many times have you invited me to something that didn't involve watching your kids? How many times have you asked me how I am? How many times have you treated me as anything other than a convenient babysitter? Silence on the other end. Exactly, I continued. Never. Because for you, for Amanda, for Robert, I only exist when I'm useful. Well, guess what? I don't accept that anymore. You're the grandmother. You're supposed to be there for the kids. I am a person before I am a grandmother, and that person deserves respect. Amanda says she never wants to see you again. That's her decision. I'll be here when she's ready to treat me with dignity, but not before. You are incredibly selfish, and you are incredibly blind, but it's not my job to make you see anymore. I hung up. This time my hands weren't shaking. This time I just felt a deep calm. Paula had heard the conversation. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me. On December 31st, we decided to have a small celebration. We bought fresh seafood at the market and cooked it ourselves. It wasn't an elaborate dinner, but it was special. We set the table with candles and wildflowers we had picked on our walks. At 11 at night, we went up to the terrace with glasses of sparkling wine. From there we could see some fireworks in the distance, small dots of light in the dark sky. To new beginnings, Paula said, raising her glass. To choosing myself, I replied. We toasted as the midnight bells began to chime from the town church. January 1st dawned quietly. Paula and I spent the day doing not much of anything, just existing, just being. In the afternoon, I received another message. This time, it was from Robert. Mom, this has gone too far. You need to come back and fix this. Amanda won't stop crying. The kids are asking for you. Dad wouldn't have wanted this. I read the message several times. The attempt to use my dead husband as an emotional weapon didn't work anymore. He had been a good man. He had valued me. And if he were alive, he would have understood why I did what I did. I replied, Robert, your father taught me that true love is not manipulation. He taught me that relationships are built on mutual respect. If Amanda is crying, maybe it's time for you to reflect on why. If the kids are asking for me, tell them their grandmother loves them, but that she also loves herself. I'll be back in 2 days. When I am, things are going to be different. You either accept the new Helen or we have nothing more to talk about. I sent the message and turned off the phone. On January 2nd, Paula and I packed our things. The drive back was quiet. I looked out the window, processing everything I had experienced in those days. I wasn't a different person. I was the same person I had always been, but finally free from the chains I had allowed to be put on me. When we arrived at my house, Paula helped me with my suitcase. Are you going to be okay? She asked. I'm going to be perfect. We hugged. Thank you for everything, Paula, for seeing me, for being there. When you want to repeat the trip, let me know. I watched her drive away. Then I went into my house. It was exactly as I had left it. Clean, tidy, empty. But now that emptiness didn't scare me. It was space. Space to build something new. I hung the painting I had bought on the living room wall. The woman looking at the sea now looked at me, reminding me who I was now. That night as I was making tea, the doorbell rang. I looked out the window. It was Amanda and Robert, together, with serious faces. I took a deep breath. It was time for the final conversation. I opened the door, but I didn't invite them in. "We need to talk," Amanda said. "Then talk." Amanda and Robert stood on the doorstep looking at me as if they didn't recognize me. Maybe they didn't. The woman they had known all their lives would have opened the door wide, invited them in, made coffee, done everything possible to soften the tension. But that woman was gone. "You're not going to let us in?" Robert asked in a tone that tried to be commanding, but sounded more like confusion. "That depends on what you've come to say." Amanda crossed her arms. Her face was tense with dark circles under her eyes, revealing sleepless nights. But I didn't feel the need to fix that. It wasn't my job to fix the consequences of their own decisions. "We came to talk about what happened," Amanda said. "About how you ruined Christmas for the whole family." "I didn't ruin anything. You created an unsustainable situation, and I simply refused to be a part of it." "You left us hanging," Robert chimed in. "We lost thousands of dollars on reservations we couldn't cancel. We had to spend Christmas with 8 screaming kids asking for you. And I spent Christmas in peace for the first time in years. It was a choice. Mine." Amanda took a step forward. "Do you know how hard it was to explain to the kids why their grandmother abandoned them? I didn't abandon anyone. I refused to be used. There's a difference." "This is ridiculous," Robert said. "You're our mother. You're supposed to be there for us." "I was your mother my entire life. I raised you. I cared for you. I sacrificed everything for you. But you're not children anymore. You're adults with your own families. And I am no longer obligated to solve all your problems." "So what?" Amanda looked at me, her eyes shining. "We're not your family anymore. We don't matter. You stopped treating me like family a long time ago. You turned me into a service, something useful but not valuable." "That's not true." "No." I held her gaze. "When was my last birthday, Amanda?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "August 15th, almost 5 months ago. You didn't call. You didn't visit. You didn't even send a message until 3 days later. And you, Robert? Not even that." Robert looked away. "We've been busy. You're always busy, except when you need me for something." "This is an exaggeration," Amanda said. "Yes, we've been busy, but we've always loved you. Love without actions is just noise. You loved me when it was convenient. You looked for me when you needed something. But when I needed something, when I was sick, when I was lonely, you were never there." Amanda wiped away the tears that were starting to fall. But this time, I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. These were tears she needed to cry. "So now what?" Robert asked. "You're just cutting us out of your life." "I'm not cutting you out. I'm setting boundaries. I will no longer be available every time you need me. I will no longer pay for things you should be paying for. I will no longer watch your children every time you want to escape. I have my own life, and it's time for me to live it." "But you're the grandmother," Amanda insisted. "Yes, I am the grandmother, and I love my grandchildren. But loving them doesn't mean sacrificing my dignity. If you want me to be a part of your lives, it's going to be on my terms, with respect, with consideration, with reciprocity." "This is selfishness," Robert said. "Call it whatever you want. I call it self-respect." There was a long silence. Amanda and Robert looked at each other, communicating in that silent language only siblings share. Finally, Amanda spoke. "And what if we can't accept that? Then we have nothing more to talk about. The door is open when you're ready to see me as a person, not a resource. But I'm not going to beg for your respect, not anymore." Amanda turned and started walking to the car. Robert stayed a moment longer, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. There was something there, maybe confusion, maybe the first flicker of understanding. "I never thought you'd do something like this," he finally said. "Neither did I, but it turns out I'm stronger than both of you believed." He nodded slowly and followed his sister. I watched them get in the car and drive away. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel relief. I just felt calm. I closed the door and leaned against it. My legs were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally having said everything I needed to say. The next few days passed in a strange stillness. My phone didn't ring. There were no messages. There were no attempts at contact. It was as if my children had decided to follow through on their threat to disappear from my life. And strangely, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. I started to build a new routine. I woke up when my body wanted to, not when an alarm forced me. I ate breakfast slowly, savoring every bite. I read the books I had bought years ago, but never had time to open. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. I met other women my age, women with their own stories, their own battles, their own victories. We formed a small group. We got together on Thursdays to paint and talk. One of them, Sonia Miller, told me her own story, how her children had also used her for years, how she had finally said enough, and how after a difficult year her children had come back with a different attitude. Not all of them come back, she warned me. Some never understand. But even if they don't, you'll be fine, because you finally have yourself. She was right. A month passed, then 2. March arrived with its warmer days and longer nights. I was still living my new life, quiet, independent, at peace. One Tuesday afternoon, I was in my garden planting flowers when I heard the gate open. I looked up and saw Robert standing there alone with his hands in his pockets. "Hi, Mom." I took off my gardening gloves and stood up. "Robert, can I come in?" I thought about it for a moment. Then I nodded. "You can come in." We went into the house. I poured him some water. We sat in the living room with the painting of the woman looking at the sea, watching over us from the wall. "Nice painting," he said. "I bought it on my trip." There was an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Robert spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we treated you. And you're right." His voice broke slightly. "You're right about everything." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "Lucy and I have been talking about how we depended on you for everything, about how we never asked how you were, about how we turned you into an employee instead of treating you like our mother." He wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm truly sorry." The words I had waited years to hear finally came, but I didn't need them in the same way anymore. They no longer defined my worth. "Thank you for saying that," I replied calmly. "Do you think we can start over differently? With respect?" "That depends on you. I've already made my boundaries clear. If you're willing to respect them, we can try." He nodded. "We'll respect them, I promise." I didn't know if Amanda would eventually come around too. I didn't know if things would ever be completely normal again. But I had learned something crucial. My peace didn't depend on them changing. It depended on me staying firm in my own value. Robert left after an hour. It was a small, cautious conversation, but it was a start. That night, I sat on my terrace with a cup of tea and my notebook. I looked at the stars and thought about the journey I had taken, from that painful conversation I overheard in hiding to this moment of calm. I opened the notebook and wrote, "Today I learned that letting go isn't abandoning, it's liberating. I learned that true love doesn't demand sacrifice but mutual respect. I learned that it's never too late to choose yourself. I am 67 years old, and I finally discovered that the most important woman in my life is me." I closed the notebook and looked up at the sky. I didn't know what would come next. Maybe Amanda would come back. Maybe she wouldn't. Maybe my grandkids would grow up understanding that their grandmother was brave, or maybe they would never understand. But it didn't matter anymore, because for the first time in decades, I was whole. Not because someone else completed me, but because I had finally found myself, and that was enough.